hearing us by way of social media, we thank you for hitting that button and coming in on our platform this morning. We'd like to give honor to our pastor, District Elder John Anderson, and his wife, Sister Sally Anderson. Again, thanking them for sharing their platform with me this morning. Today, in our Sunday school lesson, we'll be continuing from the same Sunday school lesson that evangelist Jackie Scott has been doing. We'll be coming from the August the 21st lesson, and the lesson is entitled Ananias healed Saul. The background of this here is very familiar. We have heard this preached, I'm sure, hundreds of times, but we're not going to deal with the part where Saul actually was blinded and was on his way to Damascus. We're looking at the part that come afterwards. And if you look at it very closely, and I'm always looking for little bitty things. If you know me, I always look for little bitty things to point out. But if you look at that 10th through that 20th verse with our Sunday school lesson, it's perfect, and it kind of sets up for what's going on today. And just keep that in mind when we listen at it, when we go over this lesson. Remember, it was back over 2,000 years ago, and we're talking about now. But we can apply this to this here today. Again, I'd like to say this lesson is coming from Acts chapter 9, verses 10 through 20. And as usual, when you see me, I'll be coming from the King James Version of the Bible. That's just my preference. All of them are good. And setting it up again, this here was after, Saul of Tarsus, Saul before he was converted to Paul. He was persecuting the church. And so many of us, if you look at your testimony and my testimony, before we got saved, we probably was a persecutor of the church. We probably was someone did not have it in mind that we wanted to come to church, and we weren't going to be with those kind of people. And even today, a lot of people are looking at that about the church. But when we study this lesson, you'll see God have a plan for your for your life. Even when you don't know what's going on, God have your life going on. So just give this lesson. If you have any questions, stop me at any time. And if you call in, send something in, we'll try to answer that question. Looking at verse 10, after Paul had been struck down, the horse had blinded him, and he had to stop, and he was in Damascus. Verse 10, let's look at that, and we have a lot to say about that one. I hope I can get off of verse 10. And there was a certain disciple, at Damascus, named Ananias. And to him said the Lord in a vision. Ananias called him by name, and he said, "Behold, I am the Lord." This lesson right here sets the backdrop of everything. Just think in our present day that when the Lord calls us, and he makes no mistake, he's going to call your name. And if you don't mind me saying it, if you want a little humor with it, he's going to call you by your government name. I know a lot of us, like a lot of people, I can tell who calling me, who talking to me. If most people are calling me Mr. Kendrick, I know most of them are in Savannah. But if I hear the name Ken, that's coming from Buffalo, New York. Most people call me Ken there. And, and I just know where it's at. And if I hear my first and middle name, I know that's coming from Mississippi. But that's not my government name or my legal name. My name is Ollie Kendrick. That's my name. And that's how when God called you to do something. Even myself, in just a 2-second testimony, when I was called to preach, when I was called into the ministry, I was around 17 years of age. God called Ollie Kendrick. Yes, he put that middle name in there if you're listening, but I don't call that name. But he called me by my name. And that's when he called me to preach. I know he called me. You can't take that away from me. You can say whatever you want to say, but I know the call. And that's how And I know the voice of God too. You got to know when other people can call you too, or other entities can call you. But when the call come from God and you are in tune with God, you know you know who it is. You know who the call is coming from. But anyhow, he said, and there was a certain disciple of Damascus, named Ananias, and he said, and to him said the Lord in a vision, Ananias, called him by name, and he said, behold, here am I. Here, and he said, behold, I am here, Lord. In other words, he let him know, and that was in a vision. And sometimes you might not get to call audibly, even though that's the way it was with me. You might, like you say, it was in a dream, in a vision. You might be sitting somewhere, but you know when it's of God and you know when it's not of God. And I like using this word in the first part of the word for a study. They say, and a certain disciple. In the original, if you go to the Wheatfield Bible, it do not say disciple. Now, this is probably going to mess up some of the theology of some of these other preachers what don't know this here. Is they said, and it was a certain prophet. That's the original. We bring it over like this here. They turn into a disciple. For people who say there's no modern day prophets, we don't need them. They called them that, and this is clearly after the church was started. It wasn't before. And we changed it. And there was a certain prophet in Damascus named Ananias. And it's something strange. I don't know who changed it, but when I see different changes like that, when I'm doing my analyzing of stuff, I had to go look at it more. But it wasn't until 2004 that the Roman Catholic Church decides to make Ananias a saint, a so-called saint, a so-called prophet. It was in the year of 2002 that they decide to make Ananias a saint. You never heard of a Saint Ananias before then, but that's even though he was one of the first prophets. When we look at the history of this Ananias, who should have been in my opinion, of what they do now, this is my opinion. If any question come in, bring it in to me. That he should have been canonized a long time ago, because he was the one. If you see when we go back to the lesson, you see what he did. He probably should have been one of the first one, maybe right after the apostles. He probably should have been one of the first one. But it was only until 2004 when Ananias was canonized as a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. Back to our lesson. In verse 10, he said, behold, I am here, Lord. Lord, I'm here. You called me. What is it now? Anytime you get a call from God, you should be ready to go. And I say that with pride. When he called your name, he might just be calling you to turn a page in a book. He might be calling for you just to come up and wipe off the altar. But if God calls your name, just say, here am I, Lord. I don't want to get into this is Sunday school, but you can get in there. I go where you go. Just tell me, Lord, and all that stuff. You know how we can get that song and get going with it. But here I am, Lord. Verse number 11. And the Lord said unto him, rise up and go into the street which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayed. Now look at this here. Get it? Let's break it down. He told him, after he acknowledged the call, he told him where to go. Now that's a modern day Christian believing prophet. Now God tells you where to go. He don't put nothing in a vague something in fog that you don't know where to go. He specifically told him where to go. not talking about no one, but when someone come up and say, I can see this here around you, but I'm not for sure. If when God give it to you, you're going to be plain. He know your language. He won't be speaking in tongues. He's going to tell it to you plain in a language that you know what to do. And it will be clear. And look what he's telling this modern day prophet. He didn't only say go to Damascus. You know, some people say, yeah, you got a call. You need to get here and to Houston. Yeah, when I get to Houston, Texas, tell me where I'm going. But see, wait till I get there. You know, they tried to go back on the thing with Abraham, but we can discuss that if you come down here. We can discuss that part of it. But he told him where to go. He know he was going to Damascus. He told him what street he was going on. I know we have preached this here, and a lot of people say, yeah, God can put you on straight street and all of this, and like he did Paul. But if you go to Damascus today, it's still the street called straight street. It's a street. And while he was picking it out, because that's sometimes as saints of God and ministers of God, we have to go to places where we don't want to go. And sometimes it be a place where we are delivered from. But God sometimes send us back to that. But he have the Holy Ghost when he send you back. When he tell you where to go, he's going to always equip you. Because look, Ananias had a lot of words. He had a lot of stuff. What he had to say, God had told him, go to the street, inquire in the house of Judas. He even told him what the address was on the street. And he told him a man of Saul of Tarsus. He even told him who was going to be there. Behold, he prayed. In other words, at the end, after he told him all of that, just think about it. And I had to think this here. I had to think of this here. Just if God would call you right now and tell you to go to a certain place. God, one of these leaders, what we don't want to be around, or somebody, God tell you to go there. Tell you where you're going to be at and where the time. But go there. But we have all kinds of things that we put up with saying we can't go there. In studying this, I wasn't able to get in touch with her, but one of our evangelists, Evangelist Barbara Barney, I wanted to be sure before I said this here, because she lives in the city of Chicago. And this kind of happened to her. He told her to go to the penthouse of Oprah Winfrey. And she went there, didn't even have a hard time to get in there, and was able to talk to her and to witness to her and to tell her things. And I think that, and in listening to that testimony, they brought this here up to me. God to tell you where to go, and if he tell you to go there, the people or the person or wherever you're going to be ready to receive you. For us to get all in our sanctified self, and we say we're going down here to this right to life rally or whatever, and I got a word from the God and I'm going to go. If God haven't sent you, you don't need to go. Because he's going to get the people ready to hear you. If God give you the word, everybody going to be there to listen. Now, y'all see where I'm going with this lesson? We can bring this 2,000-year-old lesson right into today's language. If you got a message, and if God told you to do it, and you, without a shadow of a doubt, you know he told you, you get up and you go. But he told him where to go. And I can see different ways why Ananias was thinking about when God told him to go on Straight Street. In my Bible, when you read this, it's in red letters, and we was taught now that was Jesus speaking. So some people say he only spoke in the in the Gospels, but now we see him speaking in the Acts of the Apostles. He's speaking there. But anyhow, he told him to go on Straight Street, and I was able to see a picture of Straight Street today, and by the way, if you want to get a clear name of it, let's call it Main Street. And if you can't get out of Savannah, let's call it Martin Luther King Drive, one of the main streets. Or you can call it Broaden. but it was one of the main streets of the town where everything was going on, Straight Street. I could see Ananias wouldn't want to go there because Straight Street had all of the brothels or all of the call girl places. And we as Christians, we shouldn't go there. They had places where they drink at on Straight Street. That was the main street. All of this street was there. All of the streets coming off of Straight Street had curves and corners and stuff, but this street goes straight through the city of Damascus. And if you go to Syria today, they still have it. And they will tell you the part that was old Damascus and what's going on now. It's one of the longest streets. If you want to look at it, Google it, take it to Guinness. It's one of the longest streets in the world today. Straight Street. It had all that stuff going on. And also, some of the kings had palaces on that street. It was a lot going on Straight Street. So he had to narrow it down, and God told him to go to Straight Street, go to the main street in Damascus, and go to the house. Gave him the address. Go to 804 Highland Avenue. That's my address in Mississippi. Go to this address. Go to the 1217, wherever you live. Gave him the number and where to go. That's just like God. A right now God, a God that knows everything, a God that knows where you are, know the hairs, the number of hairs on your head. That's God. He give you a specific thing. He gonna tell you. And he told him go to Straight Street to the man's house, to Judas' house. Not Judas Iscariot, but Judas of Damascus. That's where he had to go. And you're going to meet Saul of Tarsus, somebody who persecuted the church, somebody who was bad. No, and God today, you can call me a modern day prophet. He's going to tell some of us to go to the gang members sitting on the streets. He's going to tell us to go to some people who we don't think should be in the church. But remember, we was out there one time too, and a lot of people thought we shouldn't be here. But we thank God for he got on someone's mind and he told him to get there. But he told him where to go and told him you go and see this man who you can't stand, who prosecuted the church. But God also told him, and behold, he's praying. In other words, he praying now. You ain't got to worry about it. He ain't trying to hurt nobody right now. He's praying now. Verse 12. And has seen, and this still talking to Ananias, and has seen in a vision a man, he was talking to Ananias about Paul. He said, and has seen in a vision a man named Ananias coming in. Paul also had the vision. Now, I know my God can do this in, and I want to think about it. You remember what I told you about the evangelist? And everybody can't get in just to go in the first day to see Oprah. So God had to prepare her so she knows she had the message and know she was in the right place without an announcement, without an invitation, without nothing. Going up saying you want to see him starting in the bottom of the building, going up to her penthouse, you was able to get in there. Now that's just like God. Didn't have to go and come back. You had to go that one day. Never met her. I don't think they even know names or nothing. But God will prepare it. So while we sitting here and we sitting in the house with our unsaved loved ones and God telling us to go witness to this person, go talk to this person, he's sitting right there and we trying to make excuse. If God is telling you to do it and you know it's the voice of God, they're going to be ready to sit down and listen. How many times have we went to someone and when we finally get up there, they say, I was waiting on you last week, and you know God moved up on you then. And I was waiting on you last year, but God moved up on me, and you didn't make the move. So when he tells you to do it, this is a soul saving in his life. We're looking at someone's life when God speaks to us to do something. And he tells us to do it, we go do it. Even Brother Caleb Harrell was sitting in the church in Mississippi. Nothing was never told. We was needing money. We didn't have money for the mortgage. We could have lost our church. sitting there in church. He had a wife that was sick. She was a diabetic. She had both her legs cut off. But God moved upon him to give the church over $32,000 to save it. The pastor never said nothing to nobody about it. And then after church, he came up and told him, I needed to give you this here. So when God tells you to do something, just do it. And Brother and Sister Harold, they've gone on now, but they never lacked for anything. They always had. That was some of his retirement money. And God said, give it to it right now. Give it, give it, give it, give it. So when God tells you to move, God tells you to do something in the middle of it, do it. And that's what was going on with this here. Verse 12, and he said, and has seen in a vision. In other words, Paul is praying now, and he has seen in a vision a man named Ananias. He know your name, coming in and putting in his hand on him that he might see. See, and sometimes you say God can use who he wants, but when he's using you, let him use you. And sometimes somebody say if they can only get to the altar and just touch that preacher, or just get to that church sometime. Yes, glory is in a place, and glory is on a person. Don't start me with that. Sometimes you just have to get there. It's not about that's the only place. It's where God is and where glory is. And if sometimes you have to touch that person or touch that place, that's where you have to go. If God move up on you, say, just drive by. Just go on by. He got something for you. It's just wherever it's at, wherever glory is. That's where you have to go. Verse 13, and Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard many things. I have heard by many of this man, how much evil he has done to thy saints in Jerusalem. I wanted to say something about the word saints too, but we'll get into that later. But sometime because of the person, what we have heard about that person, we get all afraid about that stuff. We get all afraid. I can't talk to him. Oh, he was the bishop over here. He was the archbishop over here. Or he was the doctor. He is a great professor. This is the man that discovered the rocket. This man did this here. We intimidated by some of the titles about where some of the people are. And that's what Ananias was making that excuse. He was saying, I have heard about this man and all the things what they do in the church. And before I go on, I'd like to tell you what they do. They lie. That's it. They lie. When you hear a lot of stuff about a lot of days and a lot of this here, you got to look at it because they lie. And they all might have it wrong at this time. They might have it wrong. But when they got it when he have it like that and God is talking to you and you know it, don't worry about what the naysayers or what they say. Because they don't know everything. We don't know everything. You don't know everything. Everybody don't know everything, but we know God who knows all things. Just remember that. He knows all things. And let's see what else he was saying about it, and we're going to go on. It said in verse 13 again, and Ananias answered, Lord, I have heard by many of this man how much evil has been done to thou saints in Jerusalem. If we have time, we'll go back to that. And here he has authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name. He got the authority to bind everything. If you're going to talk in the name, and if you want me to get ahead, it's about the name of Jesus. That's the name they were talking about. He got the authority from them. I give you the authority from the Archbishop of Canterbury to come down and you can do this here. He got it like we think the Archbishop is the only one that got a direct contact with God. Thank God for the cross. Thank God when the veil was torn, everybody have access. We don't need a priest now. I got the same thing as my bishop got. God can talk to me just like he talked to them. But God is so much in order. If he talking to me about one thing, he talking about to the bishop or the pastor about something else, and we all shall be together. And I digress a little, but if your vision, if you in a church and your vision is different from what the pastor, y'all need to get together, because it ain't but one in the house. There's only one in the house, and that's for Bible class, not for Sunday school. Let's go on. And here, verse 14, and he has had authority from the high priest and bind all that call up on the name. We're going on to verse 15, but look, I like this here. It said, and has verse 13, the latter part, has much evil he has done to thy saints at Jerusalem. What we call the people in church, saints. So anybody, you don't just take out certain people and call them saints. He said, to the saints at Jerusalem with an S. If you're in the church, you can be considered yourself a saint. You're either a saint or a sinner. We can't separate it. So it's a lot can go on with that. But he said the saints in Jerusalem. Verse 15. Sorry to be jumping around so much. Okay. Verse 15. But the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me, to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. Just think about what Ananias is carrying. He got to go talk to this person who gonna bear his name before before a lot of people, a lot of important people. When we hear the name of so many great men of God, it was always some old lady on the front row what gave him his handkerchief, or some kind of little small thing, but encouraged this great man to be big. And just remember, when God gives you a word for that drug addict on the street, or that girl who you think would never amount to nothing, that could be the next great bishop. That could be the one that's going to usher in the new, going into the new millennium, going into the new. I'm trying not to say some words, but what I'm studying, what the new level, going to the next level. We never know who that person is. And when God gives you that revelation to go and talk to them, that's what you just got to go. Because God getting you ready. He told him what Paul was going to do. He was going to be the vessel that bear my name before the Gentiles and before the unclean people. God knew who he can trust. The apostles, or the 12 apostles that were with Jesus, did not go into all the world until after Paul was the one, to be honest, running them out. He the one that's, because of what he was doing, got them to go other places. So that's in a little small way, you could say that it's lining up with that. He was going to, preach him, and he was going to be responsible. He's going to be responsible for his name going before the Gentiles and to kings. Look at all of the kings that he talked to. King Agrippa. He went before Caesar. I can't remember his name. I think it was one of the Augustus. He went before Felix. He went before a lot of, I can't think of them right now. Paul was the one that went before then. And let's look at it, probably because he had the education. Peter had the keys, but if he didn't have the background behind his name, what Paul had behind his background. But he was able to get an audience with all of these people, and God prophesied that years before it happened. It wasn't to just a disciple, it was to a prophet. He prophesied it and told him what to do. God have to use that, and I'm digressing in my time getting away, but God have to use you right there in the moment. And to say that you're not a prophet, you can be a modern day prophet without the name. No, I'm not pushing that. I'm just saying what you can be. Just be all you can in Jesus. Okay, it said, what I'm at, I'm still at verse 15, okay? I'm getting ahead of myself. Verse 16. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Oh, yes. God, when he prepared you to go somewhere, and we heard it preached, everything is not going to go through on a flower bed of ease. You're going to know that there's certain things you're going to have to go through. Though I walk through the shadows of darkness. What did it say? I walk through the shadow of darkness, God will be with me. My mind is running before me. You know it's in the 23rd Psalm. In the valley of the shadows of death, I will feel no evil. For God going to prepare for you. Now, any great man of God, he went through something. If you want to study the life of William Carey, one of the great Baptist missionaries who went overseas, he went through a lot of stuff and ended up being buried in the ground and his head trampled. God will show you that. Even to the end, Paul knew the end was coming because God had showed him that he had to go through. So when God give us the message to go tell someone, they are prepared. And we don't have to give he never told him, give him the message of death, of the doom, of what might happen, all of the trouble. He said, God is letting Ananias know, the prophet, the disciple, or however you want to call him, letting him know that this man is prepared. I have prepared him. Now go and tell the man that you're afraid of. Talk to me, Jesus. Some of us need to go talk to some of our bosses. Sometimes, that's why you're having a hard time. They might be trying to get your attention. Sometimes we might need to just go in there and say, hi, Mr. So-and-so, this here. But you might not know me, but I'm down here, and I am a child of God. But when you put it out that you're a child of God, you got to live like that. They're going to be looking. And sometimes, and that's how we have to do it sometimes. Just listen to God. You're there. We are witness. We are the witness. And I was praying one day, and I was talking to someone, and we was talking about why so many people are not in the church right now. COVID did this here to us. COVID did this here. I said, and we began to talk, all things work for the good of God. And sometimes God used that COVID to send some of us out to be missionaries. We say they're not here now, but they are. We don't see where they're doing nothing crazy. They're out there. They could be witnessing to people. Because he bring it, all things works for the good. And we sitting up here and sanctified and shouting on this good carpet and doing everything. Sometimes we need to be out. So we should pray for them. Pray that God protect them. And if God want to bring them back, let him bring it back. And I say this here, and this for a Bible class too. Sometimes you bring them back, you don't want them back yet. Just let God do what he do. Let's just pray. Let's pray for it. Put your hand or covering over. God, you brought this pandemic. You know what's going on. God, you do it. Just show me what you do. Put me in line. And so that's how we have to be. He said he had showed Paul all of that stuff. And this is the man that was scattering the church of God out of Jerusalem. Because of that, his prosecution, the church just bloomed after that. They were sitting up in there, or they had that good experience. They were trying to get that first shout back from when they had it on the day of Pentecost. But when God sent Saul of Tarsus, he just started a little early. He sent them into Jerusalem, and then they all go. And then God let him know, don't be afraid of this man, because he's going to preach to the Gentiles. He's going to preach before kings. He's going to stand before them. That's what he's going to do. And he also told him he was going to be there for the Israelites too at the end. And it said, and they come in, in our sight, and he's filled with the Holy Ghost. Okay, I don't got to live further. But up there in 15, he said his name, he's going to bear his name before the Gentiles and kings and queens and to the children of Israel. And the time is getting away from me. Just remember the first argument in the Bible, when the disciples was called together, the first recorded argument in the Bible, let me keep it said like that. When the disciples got together and they was arguing over what they was going to do to the Gentile, they was fighting over about what they should eat, even fighting over by the circumcision and what to keep of the law. And it was Paul that stood up and said, don't put this yoke on these brothers. He went to the Israelites, he went to the Jews and told them it was this man right here that was prophesied by a little old man in Damascus. This is the only time, or one of the first times, you hear something about Damascus. So because you live on Duffy Street in Savannah, Georgia, that don't mean you ain't nobody. You are somebody great. You got the message to someone who's great, who's going to be great. You got it. And that is what Paul did, and I'm watching my time. You can come on down here to our church. We are getting ready. In about a few minutes, we will be getting ready to go into our morning service. It said, verse 16, for I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Just think about it. Paul had a little upper hand. He was showed that he was going to suffer some things for his name's sake. Just think about everything was in order, and this one little old sanctified preacher from nowhere had it. This man, how many books in the Bible did he write? 1/4 of the Bible. That's Old and New Testament, and probably half of the New Testament. This one man wrote it. But it took a little bitty humble preacher. He couldn't get one out of Jerusalem. He couldn't get one out of Caesarea Philippi. He couldn't get one out of Ephesians or Corinthians. He had to go to Damascus on one of the worst streets in the world at that time to send a little preacher. Because some of us now, we sitting in the big chair now. We ain't got time to go down there on Broad Street. But God you want to be the one that God can take you from nowhere and use you, and you can see certain things. And time is getting away from me. Everybody what know me, they know I was one of the right-hand men for the late Bishop Dees. I was right there. Everywhere he went. But it's like 7 preachers come out under him who is pastors. But they look at me, they say, why didn't you get to go there? I said, I was in my place. I was right there, and I honored them. And all of those 7 pastors called me every year to come preach because they remember how I stood past, how fast I stood. Even getting degrees and stuff, I knew where I was when you stay in your calling. So if you're supposed to be somewhere, just do it. Just do it. Just stay there if you know your place. Even when you find a church. We founded a church, me and my wife, we founded a church in West Virginia. We founded it in our living room. It's still going on now, but God said, you ain't the pastor. 3 years later, you was moved, and it's still going. You just stay in your place and do what you're supposed to do. And that's how God, when he does all of this here, he have it in order for you. And all you have to do, just get on Straight Street and just stay there. I can just see Ananias going down Straight Street. He coming in on the bad end of it, on the west end, if you don't mind me saying it. Seeing all of the killing, all of the prostitution, all of the drug dealing. He going on down. Then he get into a place where a little better. But God say, go on the Straight Street because you got to get to where Judas is, to Judas' house. That's where you got to go. And he went by the kings. He went by the government. All of this here was on State Street. But then in the backyard probably of one of the dignitaries was a little bitty house where Judas was. And I will find it. I want to know, why was he at Judas' house? Why he picked this house? It was a blind man. How he get to that house? That's something to think about. And the answer is in the Bible. And to give me time, I promise you, I will find it. If the answer is in the Bible, I will find it. But took him to Judas' house off of Straight Street, on Straight Street. not off of one of them little curvy streets. He was still there. Told him where to go. Now, we're talking about true prophecy now. Told him where to go, and he got him and had him there. Okay, verse, I think that was 16, verse 17. And Ananias went his way and entered into the house and put his hands on him, said, Brother Saul, ain't that nice? He didn't call him apostle. I ain't going there. He said, Brother Saul, the Lord, even Jesus, has appeared unto thee. He hadn't talked to this man. Told him what God has told him. See, ain't that God? God can tell the prophet what you saw. Just look at this here. He said, and appeared, oh my God, I keep, talk to me, Jesus. Even appeared unto him, unto thee, in the way thou hadst come, how I was coming, who was coming, and has sent me, that thou might receive thy sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost. You're going to receive his sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost. I like number 16, but you know I would. And immediately there fell from his eyes as it had been scaled, and he received the sight forthwith and arose and was baptized. It's still true today. When they get it, if they get the Holy Ghost first or whatever, they still got to be baptized. And I'm not going on that, but you got to be baptized. That's just part of it. God knows what he's doing. I'm not saying all will be baptized, but I said, but you got to be baptized. If you want me to explain that, come on down here to New Life Experience Church, and we will. Okay, verse 19. And when he had received meat, in other words, he have eaten. Back then, you just didn't eat with everybody. And I like the way this said, and he had received meat, he was strengthened. Everybody, you don't feed everybody because food was scarce back then. When people come in, all you did, the nicest thing to do was to wash their feet. That was nice. You didn't feed everybody because you never knew when the next meal was coming. They didn't have Kroger's and Publix. And sometimes they had to go out and kill their food. They might have had a little market or something going on, but you never knew how long that would have been out there. Sometimes you had to go, but they had meat. Now, this is the man that was prosecuting the church. This was the man that was doing all sorts of bad things. And sometimes, you know, even I've heard this here. Everything is not going to come across the pulpit. Some things going to come at a dinner table. Just how when you relax, when you got to witness to someone, sometimes you might have to take this person out sometime and give him something to eat and feed him right there. And then you talk and you can break the word to him. When we eating with you, we let down our God. But anyhow, Paul, he received meat and he was straightened. Then Saul, then was Saul certain days with the disciples, which was at Damascus. He was there only a few days after he got his strength. In verse 20, and we're getting ready to close. And straightway he preached Christ in the synagogue, that he was the Son of God. In other words, that person is so full of the Holy Ghost when God gives us the prophecy to go to it, and we can see what God has planned right before our eyes. Just immediately as Paul got strength, he got up and went to the synagogue. Just think, I wish today you go into a Jewish synagogue. Yeah, I said it now. Of go into a Jewish synagogue and bring up the name Jesus. You'll be stoned out. So Paul went to the very place where he got the authority from to go kill the people and preached it. He preached it right there. And he went out straight away into the synagogue and preached that that Jesus was the Son of God. We thank you for We thank you today for tuning in to us. This is a lot more in this lesson, but we want to give you time to come down here to the New Life Experience Church, where the Spirit of the Lord is, and I guarantee you, if it's something that you need from God, we have it here. So come on down. You have a few more minutes, and you can come down here where our pastor is Pastor John Anderson.